الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the subject of al-Fiqh from the book Risala fil Fiqh al-Muyassar, and your translated version, the next chapter is about the najasat, right, the impurities. But in the Arabic version of the book, the next chapter is al-Istinja. So, which basically topic 4. So we'll go to topic 4 first, inshallah, to follow the original book, and then we go back to topic 3 afterwards, inshallah. So topic 4, which is the etiquettes and cleaning oneself after relieving oneself. So this is al-istinja wa adab at-takhalli. Al-istinja wa adab at-takhalli. And before we start, I remind myself and everyone with al-ikhlas, seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and never lose the azima or the determination to continue to study. This is the most valuable thing for us to seek, the ilm of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. And people are in need of the ilm of the deen more than they need food and drinks. As Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he said, and these are the best gatherings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our gatherings with the rewards that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised for those who are in the masajid seeking the ilm, the knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. We talked about the different types of water, and all of this as conditions for the wudu, and the wudu is a condition for the salah. So this is the most important act in our life, establishing the salah. So part of that, the ulama, they mention in the books of fiqh, al-istinja wa adab at-takhalli, and this is with regards to relieving oneself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us in such a way that we eat and drink, and we have to go by, as they say, وَلَازِمُ ذَلِكَ, by necessity. If you eat and drink, if you're a human being, you have to excrete certain things, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, and there's no shyness in matters of religion. And this deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala perfected it. And as Hudayfa radiallahu anhu and others, they said that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he even taught us hatta al-khira'ah. Even relieving oneself, it's part of the deen. So the deen is in everything in our life, and one of which is how to clean oneself and what's considered to be pure, what's impure, and how the etiquettes and the manners to be observed according to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But we're looking at it from fiqh perspective. So this will be based on masail, one mas'ala after the other, as we heard. The first thing that he mentions is al-istinja and the definition of al-istinja. Al-istinja is basically on the wazn of al-istif'al. Like always the verb, when you have alif sin ta before it, that means you're seeking, and then the letters afterwards comes from a najw, or something that is cut off from someone, which is basically referring to when a person urinates or defecates, to clean oneself of the traces of these things left on the body, because these things are impurities, which is something that is mujma' alayh, consensus, of course, that urine and feces are impure. This is for the human beings. Other animals, there are details. So for the human beings, the urine and the feces are all impure. And therefore, al-istinja is to clean what might be on the body from the traces of what's impure, which is the urine or the feces. So that's why the definition of it is إزالة الخارج من السبيلين بالماء, to remove what comes out from as-sabilain. And as you see, the Arabic language has so much adab in it, which makes it difficult sometimes when you're translating it to another language. As-sabilain, the two sabil, right? Sabil, the word sabil, you even hear the word sabil fi sabilillah, right? Which means the two paths, which is the two paths of impurities in our body, which is the front and the back, right? So this is, inshallah, since this is more of a ilm session, so we need to have these terminologies so that we repeat them. We don't have to translate them. So when I say as-sabilain, It depends whether it's sabilan or sabilain. So a sabilain, which is basically the front and the back, the places where urine and feces comes out from. So إزالة الخارج من السبيلين بالماء, with water. This is the definition of الاستنجاء. الاستجمار, he mentioned here another terminology that we need to also know. الاستجمار, very close. Here, الاستجمار also, since it starts with alif sin ta, that means seeking whatever is from al-jimar. Al-jimar is basically comes from the stones that they would use to clean oneself. So it's basically removing the same thing, izalatul kharij, removing what comes out from as-sabilain. We know as-sabilain, right? Everybody clear with the sabilain? Here, bihajar aw waraq wa nahwihim, with a stone, with papers, and the like of this. So al-istajmar, even though comes from al-jimar, which is stones, but comes into the same category of that, using tissues, papers, things like this. So this is called al-istijmar. So to seek these things to clean oneself. And as you see, there is istinja and there is istijmar. Both, this is mas'ala. Is it mandatory for a person to use water, or it's sufficient if a person use hajar or waraq? Right? So this is a mas'ala. And of course, this is, again, this is agreed upon. It's very clear in matters of fiqh that using water is not mandatory. It's the best, it's the most cleaning, and so on. But if a person uses stones only, this is absolutely fine, as long as there's no najasa, as long as it does not leave traces of najasa or impurities. So as this is as far as the hukm is concerned. What's best is to have both. And this is just, I was mentioned this since it's already there, but we need to make it as brief as we can, inshallah. The mas'ala here is what's most recommended is to use both, and to start first with the stone and then the water, or with the paper and then the water. We're not talking about drying. Drying is something as you can dry afterwards. Why? So that the najasa, the impurity, does not spread if you use it the other way around. Right? If you use water first, like meaning the ulama, when they mention this in the books of fiqh, you have a little bit amount of water and tissue, for example, or papers, right? So which one should you use first? One is not going to be enough. So you use the papers first and then the one. Right? Otherwise, this can spread the najasa more. But anyway, so, and this is the first two terminologies, al-istinja wal istijmar. Sometimes they would use one and they mean the other two if only one is mentioned. So the next mas'ala, yustahabbu, that means it's recommended. So yustahabbu عند دخول الخلاء, when a person enter al-khala. And al-khala is the word used for the place where people, they relieve themselves, whether we call it now the bathroom or restroom or whatever you call it. And al-khala comes from the empty place, because this is not the most pleasant place that a person needs to be in. And the words has significance to it, and that's why it's from the sunnah not to stay long in the places where a person relieve himself, just to do what's needed, and then a person leaves. So it's mustahab, recommended when a person enters, تقديم الرجل اليسرى, to go first with the left foot, وقول, and to say بسم الله أعوذ بالله من الخبث والخبائث, or الخبث والخبائث, and both correct, and both have different meanings, and both can one mean the other. But first of all, the mas'ala here, to go in with the left foot. The dalil and all of that, we're not into this level yet. So in general, the rule is that anything that is khabith, or anything that is impure, as a rule in the sharia, that you use the left. And anything that is pure or good, you use the right. So when entering, this is not a good place. This is a place that can have impurities in it. So you enter with the left foot. And this is if it's something built, of course. If someone in the desert, there's no left and right. Unless some said that you do that for the place or the spot that you're going to sit, or so, for relieving oneself. So to say, to enter with the left, and to say, this is from the sunnah, Bismillah, a'udhu billahi min al-khubuthi wal-khaba'ith. Al-khubth with the sukoon, whether it's the male and female of the jinn, and khubuth, impurities in general, and both are valid in this dua. So you're seeking refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from male and females of the jinn and from anything that is impure. The tahara, purification, reminds us of purification in general, even non-physical purification. And impurities remind us also of the non-physical impurities. So you seek in refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from anything that is impure, and Bismillah takes the evil ones away from us. So this is to be said when a person enters with the left foot. The next mas'ala, يستحب عند الخروج من الخلاء. يستحب أيضا, recommended when a person goes out, is to go out with the الرجل اليمنى, the right foot, and to say غفرانك. And to say غفرانك, which means basically it's the noun of, oh Allah, forgive me. And it's more of al-ism, or the noun is more stable than the verb. So when you say غفرانك, that means you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness at all times in a very perfect way. غفرانك. And then to say Alhamdulillah الذي أذهب عني الأذى وعافاني. Alhamdulillah, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that أذهب عني, took away from me, الأذى, the harm, the harmful things, وعافاني, and made me healthy, give me strength. Because of these impurities, of course, that it's toxic. It's not a good thing. So this is by the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, and a person is not able to get rid of it, this is a very difficult thing for someone to witness that or to experience that. And how many people they see the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon them, that when they relieve themselves. And غفرانك, as the ulama mentioned, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say that for two things that mainly they mentioned, the wisdom behind it. Whether the first one is that dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is forbidden while a person relieving himself. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say غفرانك because he was not able to make dhikr of Allah. And the second thing is that غفرانك because of not the inability to be grateful to Allah for such a great favor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the ability to relieve oneself. But anyway, this is what the Prophet ﷺ said. So this is the mas'ala of coming out with the right foot and to say غفرانك Alhamdulillah الذي أذهب عني الأذى وعافاني. And as you see the adhkar, we can go on and on with these types of things, of course, and the meanings of it. Two things that this dua or this hadith shows the perfect strength that a person can have in this life. Adha, harm, is removed, and to have strength. You might have adha or harm removed, but you're not having strength. So it's not quite perfect. You might have strength, but you still have some harm. So when you have both taken care of, this is a great favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then after that, the next mas'ala, yustahabbu, it's recommended. So here the mas'ala is the ruling of it, al-istihbab. So in fiqh, when you're asked about a hukm, we need to have two things, as we said in this course when we're going through the book of fiqh here. We need to know the mas'ala itself. What is the mas'ala? What is the matter? What's the thing that we're discussing? And the hukm of it. The hukm of it as according to what we're taking here. And the evidences and the differences of opinions and all of that later, inshallah. And in this level, just the mas'ala and the hukm of it as it's stated here in the book, unless it's said otherwise. So the mas'ala here, لمن أراد قضاء الحاجة. Whoever wants to قضاء الحاجة, to al-qada is to get something taken care of. Al-haja is the need. So to get the need taken care of, which is basically relieving oneself, going to the bathroom. Whoever wants to do that, yustahabbu, it's recommended, اعتماده على رجله اليسرى, to sit and to rely on the left foot. If a person is sitting on the ground. فإن كان في الفضاء, so this is another mas'ala. So when a person sits on the ground, it's recommended to lean on the left foot. In other books of fiqh, which gives more details, they mention the wisdom behind it, and anything that brings benefit, you would find it that it's recommended anyway, because the Sharia always commands to bring benefit and to push away harm. So even if something comes up later that people find that this is better for them health-wise and things like this, then you can say that this is recommended, because the general rule in the deen that anything that brings benefit, this is something that is recommended, as long as it's not contradicting, of course, with something that is stated in the deen of Allah, in the Quran or the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So they say this is easier for the impurities to come out. It's easier for it that way, is when a person lean on to the left foot. So this is what's mentioned here. The next one, he says, فإن كان في الفضاء, if a person is in al-fada, al-fada is the openness, the outside. What's the mas'ala here? If a person is outside, استحب بعده عن العيون. It's recommended that بعده, for him to be away from the eyes. Means he goes far away, if it's in the open, from the eyes of the people. And of course, assuming that if a person is inside of a building, obviously that he's away from the eyes of the people. So that's why these public restrooms, right, it's what's best is for the person to be away from the eyes of the people, not to use the places where people can see each other. If you have the means, this is again, unless a person, this is the only way and he's going to hurt himself, it's a different situation, right? But in the norm is that you find a place where people cannot see you. So even if you're urinating, for example, you go and you close the door on you so that nobody would see you. So this is a mas'ala, is mentioned here. And the Prophet ﷺ used to do that. He would go far away so that nobody would see him. بُعْدُ عَنِ الْعُيُونِ وَاسْتِتَارُهُ, and to hide. So this is again, وَاسْتِتَارُهُ, السِّتْر is to be hidden. وَارْتِيَادُهُ مَكَانًا رَخْوًا, and to go to a place or to seek a place when a person, especially when a person urinate or so, that it's rakhw. Rakhw, that means it's layyin, that means it's soft. Why? Because of the irtidad, because of the repelling of the impurities on his body or in his clothing that would cause him to have waswas. Or did I have impurity on me or not? Because it's a hard surface that he is using or in front of him. So that's why the ulama, they mention here, وَارْتِيَادُهُ مَكَانًا رَخْوًا. And the Prophet ﷺ would seek that. لِبَوْلِهِ, for especially for the urine, لِأَلَّا يَتَنَجَّسْ, so that he does not have impurities, and so that he does not have the waswas. Because if the najasa comes on the body and you're certain, of course you have to clean yourself, which is why you should seek something soft. But what if you're not sure? So then the waswas comes in place. Did I have something? Did I don't have something? And the shaitan finds a way for the person to get him into the waswas and to have this thing in him. So that's why it's recommended. So as we mentioned here, more than one mas'ala, to lean on the left foot, and if it's outside, to be away from the eyes of the people, outside or inside, to cover oneself. And that's why, what's the difference between bu'duhu wa istitaru? Bu'du is to be away. Istitaru is to hide. If he's far away, it's still recommended to cover oneself. And that's even the ulama, they mention, especially with the clothing that pants and shirts makes things, person, it's easy to be exposed. But if you're wearing a thobe, for example, they would say, do not lift the thobe till you're down on the ground. Right? Details. Why? To make sure that a person is covered to the best of his ability. So that's why istitaruhu, and this is this religion is لكل دين خلقا, as the Prophet ﷺ said, for every deen there is khuluq, manners that sticks out when it comes to this deen, if it's correct to say that. وخلق الإسلام الحياء. The khuluq, the manners of this deen is al-haya, to be modest, to be shy, to be not exposing oneself and awra and so on. So away from the eyes of the people, covering oneself. irtiyaduhu مكان الرخوة, to seek a soft place so that the najasa does not come back onto the person. These are different masail. The next one, yukrahu. So this is makruh. So the hukm is makruh. So when you're asked, for example, in the exam, you're given the mas'ala. What's the ruling of it? For example, leaning on the left foot, according to what's here. What's the hukm? Wajib, mustahab, makruh, mubah, haram. These are the 5 ahkam. The 5 ahkam in fiqh. Everything in this world, either wajib, or fard or whatever, how they call it, that means it's obligatory. The opposite of that is haram. So you have the obligation versus al-haram. So these are two. And then you have what's mustahab, recommended. If you do it, you get rewards. If you don't do it, it's not haram on you. Right? The opposite of al-mustahab is makruh. And makruh is disliked. If you do it, there's no sin. But if you don't do it, you get rewards. When you stay away from it, you get reward. This is the makruh. The fifth one, al-mubah. Al-mubah, the permissible act, which is either or. So anything, any action, any food, any statement, any situation that we're in, you can classify it in one of these five. So here is what is makruh. يكره دخول الخلاء بشيء فيه ذكر الله تعالى. It is makruh to enter al-khala, to enter the place of again relieving oneself with anything that has the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إلا لحاجة, unless there is a need. That's why it's makruh. Even though the makruh here, it doesn't mean that you can do it, because as we said, that the definition of the makruh, you don't get sin if you do it. No, you treat it as haram. But when it comes to the ruling, when something is forbidden, you guys with me? Maybe you're giving some details here, but it's okay. If something is forbidden, meaning in the statement of the hadith or the verses of the Quran, but mainly in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, if it's forbidden, that means it's haram. What makes the haram halal? Not the haja, not the need, but rather the necessity. Like eating pork is haram. When is it halal for a person to eat pork? If he's dying and he's certain that he's going to die, then he would eat what is sufficient and he's not leaning towards sin even. غير متجانف لإثم. He doesn't want to commit a sin. It's not because he likes it, so it's maybe this is a good opportunity for him to eat pork. No, he's dying and this is the only thing that he has in front of him, and just to save his life, to take whatever bite or 2 bites, whatever, and that's it, because it's haram. Same thing with any haram. There's no such a thing as my life is difficult. It's okay. Be patient. Do not do haram because the haram would make your life easier. It's okay. Make your life, if your life is difficult, make it difficult. It's okay. You're not seeking for it to be difficult, but haram is haram. Only a matter of life and death. A person will be in such a great danger for his life and things of that nature. But when it comes to something that becomes permissible, if there's a haja, if there's a need, it's permissible. This becomes in the categories of makruh. Right? So here, that's why they say yukrah. It's makruh to enter the bathroom with something that has the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some money bills in some countries, they would have the name of Allah on it, for example. That means you're going to leave your money outside and then somebody takes it. No, you were commanded to guard your money. So that means what? You have to put it in your pocket and enter the bathroom because you have to save your money. If it's haram, throw your money out, but it's not haram, right? The same thing even if you have a mushaf. If you have a mushaf in your pocket, a Quran, small one in your pocket, for example, and you go into a public restroom, if you leave it outside, somebody might take it and throw it in the garbage, for example. You're not in a Muslim world, things of that nature. So what should you do? You cover it in your pocket, put it in a pocket that is covered, and then you enter and there's no harm. Phone and things like that, of course, it's not considered anything. The mushaf, the Quran, but you don't open the app when you're inside. So, again, otherwise, if it's haram, all of that will be outside. So that means you treat it as it's haram. You don't choose to enter the bathroom with anything that has the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unless it's a very difficult situation that you would face. So the mas'ala here, yukrah, dukhul khala, was something with the name of Allah. And وَرَفْعُ ثَوْبِهِ قَبْلَ دُنُوِّهِ مِنْ الْأَرْضِ. The other mas'ala, makruh also. So after mentioned what's recommended, now mention what's makruh, what's disliked. To lift the thobe or the garment before coming closer to the earth. If a person would sit on the ground, especially if people are around and things like this. وَكَلَامُهُ فِي, speaking. While a person is in al-khala, to speak. Not just when a person is in the actual action of relieving himself, just being in the place where you relieve yourself, it is makruh to speak in it, unless there's a need. Right? giving someone instructions, otherwise something bad might happen, or things of that nature. وكلامه فيه, speaking. وبوله في شق, and also it's makruh to urinate in a shiq. A shiq is a hole in the ground, some rift in the ground. If a person is urinating outside, because it might be harming something inside, or something might come out and harm you, like the jinn or something else. ومس فرجه بيمينه. Also, it's makruh to touch one's private part with his right hand. You treat it as haram again, right? You don't take from this. Sometimes people, when they learn matters of fiqh, they become at ease with some of the things that they used to stay away from. Now they say it's makruh, so it's okay. No, it's not okay. You understand that here it's not okay for a person to touch his private part with his right hand. So why is it considered to be makruh? Because if it's a necessity, then there's no harm. Okay, or a need. ومس فرجي بيمين واستجماره بها. And also it's makruh to use the right hand to clean oneself, even if he's carrying a paper or a stone or whatever, even he's not actually touching his private part with his right hand, it's still makruh to use a tissue or something like that to clean oneself with the right hand, only the left one. So this is what's makruh. Clear? Do we need to review, or it's okay? You have all the mustahabbat and it's in the book, and then all the makruh. Then you have yahrum. That means it's haram. So now masail, that is haram in relieving oneself. Yahrum استقبال القبلة واستدبارها. It's haram to face the qibla and to give your back to the qibla حال قضاء الحاجة في الفضاء, while relieving oneself in the open. Because if you're already in a place that is built, where else can you go? If the place that is built facing the qibla, or you're back to the qibla, what can you do? You can still sit, even as Hudayfa and others, when they said we went to Asham and we found that the marahid, the places of relieving themselves, already built, and it was facing the qibla or the backs of the qibla. So فَكُنَّا نَنْحَرِفْ وَنَسْتَغْفِرِ اللَّهِ, we would kind of move a little bit away and we seek forgiveness from Allah. But this is a mas'ala, debate among the ulama, because of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ forbidding facing the qibla or giving back to your back to the qibla. So some explained it, is it in the open, or also if it's a place that is built. You don't choose to build. If you're building your home, make sure that it doesn't face or give back to the qibla. But if it's already there, what's haram if it's in the open. ويجوز في العمران, and that's what he says, ويجوز, permissible in the umran, in the building, if it's built. والأفضل اجتنابه, and what's better is to stay away from it, to stay away from facing or giving your back to the qibla while relieving oneself. Okay. The second mas'ala, which is haram also, البول والغائط في الطريق, to urinate or to defecate in the path of the people, in the streets, taken aside and doing this. It's haram. It's not about a person looking bad or looking good. It's haram. There is nusus, there's text about this. And the Prophet ﷺ forbade people from urinating or defecating in mala'in الناس. Mala'in meaning people would curse, like تحت الظل, for example, under a shade. Someone wants to come sit under the shade of a tree and he sees something like this. So a person his reaction is that he might curse the one that did this. So stay away from the things that would make people curse you. So something like that. And the same thing, sometimes people there, regardless of the animals and having animals, where they would do this on the paths of the people and things like this. This is not permissible whatsoever. So في الطريق, so it's haram in the path of the people. والظل النافع, and the benefiting shade. وتحت شجرة مثمرة, all of that is haram. Under a tree that is fruitful. ونحو ذلك, and the like of this, meaning not just these specific things that is mentioned in the hadith, because the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the beginning اتقوا الملاعن الثلاث, or the three places where people would curse if someone urinate or defecate in these places. So you add to it anything also that people benefit from it, or places where people they might use and they find someone have his impurities there. So this becomes haram, and harming others is haram. Harming people, it's haram. So a person should stay away from this. Now, after what's mentioned, recommended acts and makruh acts and haram acts, then the etiquettes of cleaning oneself with 3 مسحات منقية. يستجمر is the verb of استجمار, right? استجمار is using the stones or the tissue or so. So to clean oneself بحجر طاهر, with a pure stone that doesn't have impurities in it, or again tissues or paper or so. 3 مسحات, 3 wipes. منقية, that means cleaned or clean. منقية, see the right verb here. So one should clean himself with a clean rock, wiping oneself 3 times, if that totally cleans the person. See, منقية, how it's translated? If that totally cleans the person. منقية. منقية means النقاء is when something is pure. So these wiping, these مسحات منقية. So it's not about, there's no holiness in the 3. Right? It's not about 3 times. No, it's about cleaning oneself. So if 3 times, 3 wipes, he wiped himself 3 times and still it's not clean, then he has to add more. But it's better to always make it odd number. What if someone used 1 time and there was nothing? That's fine, he's clean. But it's best to make it 3 times. فإن لم ينقذ, if it's not clean, then he would increase. So this is with regards to that it makes the person clean. ويسن قطع على وتر 3 أو 5 ونحو. يسن. Sometimes he said يستحب, sometimes يسن, which is from the sunnah, which is recommended as the language of fiqh. The sunnah means recommended. So it's recommended to stop on a witr. So you wipe 3 times. If it's still not clean, 5 times. If it's not clean, 7 times. Till the stone or the paper or so comes out clean. This is if there's no water used, if it's only the tissue. And when it comes to water, it's I don't think it's mentioned here. What's the criteria to know that a person is clean with the water? As they say it in the books of fiqh, عودة خشونة الملمس الجلد. We have the roughness of our skin. We feel the roughness of your skin. So when you feel the roughness of your skin back, that means you're clean, right? So no extremism in making sure 100% that a person is nothing, no chances. No, it does not like this. With the papers or the tissues, it comes out clean, no impurities in it. And if with one's hand with water, the feel of the skin is back to normal. And then he says something haram, يحرم الاستجمار. It's forbidden for a person to use الاستجمار or to use these things to clean oneself with. عظم, روث, وطعام, ومحترم. عظم, bones. It's haram to use bones. It's haram to use روث. الروث is the dung, which is from the animals, the feces of the animals. وطعام, food. Why would a person do that? Might be old food, becomes like harak or something, and a person doesn't have anything. You know, the deen again covers everything, every situation. So, وطعام ومحترم. محترم, anything that is respected, anything that people respect. So, for example, you know, if it's papers that people write on, for example, right? If it's something respected, you don't use it. Things like whatever is respected, and that's different from one place to the other, one time to the other. You know, the urf, one's perception is important in these matters. So this is mas'ala. And this is clear statement by the Prophet ﷺ. And then he says, وَيَجُوز. See, when we're going through the books of fiqh, we're learning the language of the ulama of the fiqh. يحرم, يجوز, يسن, يستحب, makruh, like this. So وَيَجُوز means it's mubah, it's permissible. إزالة الخارج, to remove what comes out, meaning from السبيلين, بالماء والمناديل, with water, or manadil, which is napkins, handkerchiefs, whatever, you know, cloth or waraq, papers. So it doesn't have to be either stones or water. والجمع بين الأحجار والماء أفضل, which is another مسألة. To have both the tissues and the water, or the stones and the water, better than just water alone. So if you want to put them into what's best, and then second and so on, the best is to have both stones or tissues and water. This is the first thing. Doesn't have to be stones or tissues. So nowadays, for example, we have tissue. So the best is to have tissue and water. The second category is water, and the third one is tissues. From the best to the least, and it's all permissible. The last mas'ala here, yajibu. Now he yajib. Yajib means mandatory. Whoever leaves it, it's haram. غسل موضع النجاسة من الثوب بالماء. It's mandatory for a person to ghasl, that means wash. That means the water runs on the place of najasa, of impurity, on the thobe, on the piece of cloth or the clothing, with water. It has to be cleaned with water. So this is a mas'ala. Do we have to clean the impurities with water? This is a mas'ala that the ulama talked about, because it depends on what principle that the people follow. I'm just saying that to see that the fiqh also teaches the person to be lenient and to have gentleness, right? Because the ulama, when it comes to the differences of opinions of matters of fiqh, they're all by the will of Allah seeking the truth, and there are reasons why for the differences of opinions of the ulama. They said, but of course the principle that you have in your heart is, once the truth is clear to you, to the best of your knowledge, based on the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, we follow that, and we seek excuses for those who have differences of opinions. And as Imam Shafi'i and others, they say, what I do is correct, because we should do what is correct, but it has a possibility of being wrong, right? And what others do is wrong, to my opinion, but there's a possibility for them to be right. This is in the subject of al-fiqh, because the adillah sometimes gives this leniency in understanding. Plus, there's principles that the ulama build, principles based on nusus amma, general text in the deen that gives you these principles not to be compromised whatsoever. So, for example, here in this example, when it's washing the place of najasa with water, I would mention this just as an example. You don't have to remember the details in this matter. Is because of what? Is removing the najasa a matter of ibadah, or it's just a command to be away from najasa? If it's a matter of ibadah, meaning what? That you have to do it in a specific manner, even whether it's make a reason or a sense or not. This is what ibadah is. Dhuhr is 4 rak'ah. Do you have to make a reason of it, or maybe it's 5 is better, 3 is less, whatever? No, it's 4. Ibadah. By the wahy, we get to know it this way, in a specific way, and that's it. Or the command is, be clean, remove the najas. Wudu is amr ta'abbudi. Al-wudu is an act of worship. You cannot say, I'm clean, so I don't have to make wudu. We have to make wudu in a specific way, with orders and everything like this. But to clean oneself, najasa is on your knees, for example. Do you have to clean it in a certain way? Like this, wipe it like this, or wipe it like with this side of the hand? There's no such a thing. The deen is easy. There's no a particular way to clean oneself from the najasa, but you're commanded to remove the najasa. Okay, that hadith about the water, using the water to remove it. So that's why the majority of the ulama, they say you have to remove it with water. What if someone removes it with something else? Chemical, for example. That is not harmful. Something that would remove the najasa, and the najasa is removed. So the final result is, do you have najasa on you or not? If the answer is no najasa, can you pray or not? Of course you can. Whoever can say, I cannot pray because what? Because I did not remove the najasa in a particular way. So this is where the issue is: it a command of ibadah to remove it with water, or is just the command to remove the najasa? And many of the ulama, especially the contemporary ones, is as long as there's no najasa, you're okay to pray, of course. But to make sure that this is the case, it's not necessarily all the time clear. So that's why I always use the water, of course. And the matter is easy when it comes to remove the najasa. So that's why he says here, يَجِبُ غَسْلِ مَوْضِعِ النَّجَاسَةِ مِنَ الثَّوْبِ بِالْمَاءِ. It's mandatory to remove it, the place of najasa, with water. فَإِنْ خَفِيَ, here's the mas'ala. If it's not, خَفِيَ means it's hidden. The place of najasa is hidden. you don't know exactly in which part of the pants that the najasa is in, then what do? You have to wash the entire piece of clothing here. You know that there is najasa for sure. It's not, the mas'ala here, we said we have to understand the mas'ala. The mas'ala here is not that you're in doubt whether it has najasa or not, right? The mas'ala is you know for sure there is najasa, but you're not sure which part of the clothing is the najasa on. Is it the bottom part, the top part, things like this. If you know for sure, and we're talking about situations where people might not have the luxury to have water and throw things in the washing machine and things like this. You have enough water for whatever is needed. So for example, if you know for sure, we always have to use that asl or that principle that al-yaqeen, certainty, is what we always follow. We go back to the certainty. So if the najasa is in the bottom part of your thobe, for example, you know for sure that the najasa is not on the top part. You know that it's from your waist down, but you're not sure where. Then you have to wait to wash the entire lower part of your garment, not necessarily the upper part, right? So you build your ruling or your action based on yaqeen or certainty. If you're sure that it's in the front, not in the back, then you can only wash the front, and so on. And sometimes you might need this if you're outside. A person is not sure, or he knows that some urine came into his clothing, and he's sure that it's in the right leg, for example, in the bottom, so he has to wash this part, but he's not sure, things of that nature. If he's not sure, then the whole thing has to be washed. So here is the mas'ala, فَإِنْ خَفِيَ, if it's not clear where the najasa is in one thobe, what's the ruling? If it's left like this in general, this is the mas'ala here. So if the question comes in the exam, if the najasa is not clear, it's not known in a particular place, right? Then in the garment, for example, then you have to wash the entire garment. You know there's najasa, but you're not sure which one. Remember the mas'ala last time about someone has more than one piece of garment, and you know for sure that some is impure and some is pure. What's the ruling? What's the hukm here? How to make salah? You make one salah with one garment. But you know the majority, if it's correct, this is what the opinion that we said, right? Someone said, for example, if you know that is, should I say this or no? Just on the side. Because someone asked me, and it might be things that come up sometimes. So if you have, say, for example, there are 5 garments, then some said for every thobe you make salah. You wear the first one, you make salah. You wear the second one, you make salah. Because one is clean, or some is clean, or if you know the number, probably, most likely 4 is not clean, so you make 5 salah to make sure that it's the 5. But the first one, which is a tahari, to check and so on, to make sure to the best of your ability, and then you pray one salah, this is sufficient according to what's mentioned, and this is an opinion. So the last one, if you have any questions. So now we have the last 2 mas'ala. Yajib, it's mandatory to wash the place of najasa with water. This is what we're taking, right? As far as here. And if it's hidden, which is another mas'ala, then you wash the entire garment. The last one, min as-sunnah, from the sunnah, that means it's recommended that a man urinates sitting, qa'idan. That's from the sunnah. It's recommended for a man to urinate sitting. Not like some people, they write it in the masajid, haram. No, where's you get that? Don't say something that Allah did not forbid. You don't forbid what Allah did not forbid. The word haram is dangerous. The word haram is difficult. You want to stop people from doing it. It's enough, actually. You know what, that if urinating if urinating standing is jaiz, it's permissible, not even makruh, right? If it's permissible, and you as a masjid, or you are in your home, you put a sign, or you tell the people, we're not allowing people in this building, in the bathrooms, to urinate standing, then it's not permissible for a person to go against that instruction. They're not commanding you to do something haram. They're commanding you to do something that is, permissible to do or not permissible to do. So they have the right to it. So people have to follow these instructions, right? So here, but then to be clear with matters of deen, so that we don't, for example, make it as it's haram from that sense that it's haram. No, it's from the sunnah. And يبول الرجل قاعدا, and the Prophet ﷺ, he urinated standing to show the ummah that it's permissible, or because there was a reason for it. So that's why it's what's recommended. You can say it's makruh for a person to urinate standing, and it can lead to haram if it's urination, the urine, for example, comes on the body or so. ولا يكره بوله قائما إن أمن التلوث, which is, it's not makruh if he urinates standing, if he is safe and secure from any talawuth, from any contamination or impurities, which is, who can guarantee that? Especially that the surface is now is not rakh. Rakh is what? Soft. It's not lenient, right? It's all hard surfaces. So hard surfaces, more likely that it would rebound back. So that means a person has impurities on him. So there's qara'in, there's evidences. And that's why even the word rakh was mentioned in the books of fiqh. And the way the Prophet ﷺ, when he did this, he did that in a place that is rakh, not something that would rebound back the impurities. So the ruling here is, when it comes as far as the rulings, we're not talking about our situation. It's recommended that a man would urinate sitting, and that means it's disliked unless it's safe, unless he is safe from impurities and things like that. So this is the end of the chapter of al-istinja, and then after that Sunan al-Fitra. And I can go to Sunan al-Fitra in very quick because we don't have evidences, just 1, 2, 3, 4. Question?
So is that what's referring to what's mustahab?
Very good. When the book says from the sunnah versus mustahab, it depends on, of course, the way of the book, but the word as-sunnah, that means, according to the author, this is from the sunnah. Mustahab, according to the sunnah. That means we have a clear evidence in it. In some other things where it says yustahab, it might not be with an evidence directly from the Prophet ﷺ. It's recommended because it follows the general rules of the deen. Like, for example, if something that is of cleanliness, that there's no evidence of it in the Quran and the Sunnah, but there is the general evidence is that at-tahur shatrul iman, purification is half of the faith. So if you say, it's recommended religiously even to clean yourself or in whatever, in a certain way, you can say that because it's part of the general ruling of tahar. But the ulama, they use both for the same meaning. So that's why he is differentiated between from the sunnah versus yustahab, because the word yustahab can, whether the hadith is not authentic or there's not a direct hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, but it's still recommended, versus from the sunnah, that means we have a clear evidence that the Prophet ﷺ would do that act. No.
Specifically mandatory for removing the jacket from the clothing?
Can you say that again? Is it
specifically mandatory for removing the jacket from the clothing?
Yes, according to that opinion. The same thing. For those who said to remove the najasa, you have to use water. The other opinion, which is again the fatawa of an ikhtiyarat and the choosing opinions of many of the ulama, as long as the najasa is removed, you're fine. But never use other than the water if you have water. You can use water and something else. So to be away from the differences of opinions. Do they say, the ulama, when they say there's water to remove the najasa, do they say it has to be water for istinja? No. Because for istinja, we have from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that he would use only stone sometimes. No. But this is what they said about you have to use water is for the thobe, for the garment or the grounds, because you cannot use, this is not the normal thing, or to use stones, for example, if there's urine or something like that. But again, the matter is easy, inshallah. There's questions here. The second point mentioned regarding urinate, defecate in roadways, under fruit bearing trees, does this apply to animals? I could not hear if you mentioned this applies. Yes, of course. Applies to animals when people, regardless again of what the permissibility of having a dog, for example, but you have a choice and it's permissible for you to have a dog, whether it's for your farm or something like this, and to choose for your dog to defecate under a shade of a tree that people might sit under, it's not permissible. If you have, of course, a choice, or you can remove it and things like this. Because this is, again, people would, curse if someone does this. And that's in the general ruling of avoiding any harm to be done to anyone. The second one, when removing the najasa from a garment, is pouring water on it sufficient? We didn't talk about the removal of the najasa yet. This is a chapter will come inshallah ta'ala. But in general, removing the najasa, it has to be removed. That means no traces of it to the best of your ability in our senses only, right? So you don't have to send it to the lab to make sure there's no najasa. So as long as there's no smell of the najasa, no color of the najasa, no taste of the najasa, and nobody might not want to taste this. But if there's color that is still persistent after cleaning it, then it's no harm. Like blood, for example, of menses and something like this, as the Prophet ﷺ clearly says, tahuttuhu, scratch it, and to wash it good, to rub it. And if it's after all of that, it's still the color is there, then it's clean, it's pure. For example, najasa got on your pants, you pour water on that spot, can you pray with that wet garment? You can, as long as the smell of the najasa is gone. So you don't smell the najasa and you removed it to the best of your ability, then you can pray with the wet garment. ما الفرق بين الفرض والواجب في الأحكام الشرعية? The differences between الفرض والواجب. According to the Jumhur, there's no difference. Fard and wajib are the same. According to the Ahnaf, there's differences, which is differences in terminologies only. So, which is also the Jumhur, sometimes they use it this way. The fard is a bigger obligation than the wajib. So differentiate between two levels of obligations. One is a stronger obligation than the wajib. So for example, the i'fa'ul lihya wajib, right? And salawatul khams fard. Does that mean you can shave your beard? No. It's haram to shave your beard. It's haram to miss your salah. But are they the same sin? They're not the same sin. Does that mean belittling shaving the beard? No. Right? But to put things in the right level of actions. It says under any tree or just under fruit-bearing trees. Shade and fruitful trees. So the shade can be a wall. So anything that would be for the benefit, and that's why they said أو نحوهما, anything that people benefit from, whether it's a shade in places where shade is a valuable thing. So the shade can be with a wall, from a tree, and fruitful trees, because people would use it or come underneath it to pick the fruits and things like this. So anything that people would benefit from, then it's haram to urinate or defecate under it. The last question here in the Yes, what about bottom of shoes if one has to pray with shoes on with wudu? You mean if the bottom of the shoes has najasa? Maybe. The bottom of the shoes, if a person prays with their shoes, you can pray with your shoes. Wiping over the shoes, this is something else. There's conditions that have to be met to wipe on the shoes. But a person can wash his foot, for example, in wudu, and he put his shoes on, wiped his socks over his socks, and he's wearing his shoes and he can pray in the shoes. No problem. As long as the bottom of the shoes does not have impurities in it. So you look in the bottom of your shoe and there's no impurities. Mud is pure. Dirt is pure as far as the Sharia is concerned. But if it has dung, for example, or something like this, then it's impure. You have to remove it or to scratch it on the ground for you to be able to make salah. Another question: هل الفرق بين السنة والمستحب هو وجود دليل السنة وفقط استحباب المستحب ووجود غير فيه؟ نعم، قد يكون هذا يعني الكلام في المستحب أعم من لفظ المستحب، أعم من لفظ السنة. The word مستحب is much general than the word السنة. So مستحب can mean the sunnah, which means there's a text evidence, or recommended in the general sense. A sunnah is more specific. That means from the sunnah, when they say from the sunnah, that means we have evidence that the Prophet ﷺ did that. One last question. Now, this is a good question. To remove the najasa, does it have to be tahur or it can be tahir? We know the difference between a tahur or tahir. According to it has to be removed with water, it has to be tahur. But when it comes to the tahir, they said it removes the najasa, but it doesn't make you in state of wudu. Right? So this is part of what's the differences of opinions. But it's yes, this is tahur and tahir both removes the najasa. If the najasa is in both, can basically it's permissible to be used to remove the najasa. Wow. I forgot to mention the hadith, but the hadith of today is 56. I think it's الماء طهور لا ينجسه شيء. This is the hadith number 56. We took last time hadith number 55. What was hadith 55? Anybody memorize it? Go ahead. أحسنت ما شاء الله. The Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked about the bahr, the sea or the ocean, he said, هو الطهور ماؤه الحل ميتته. And the next hadith is الماء طهور لا ينجسه شيء أو لا ينجسه شيء. الماء طهور. Water is pure. Nothing impurifies it. Nothing makes it impure. And there's explanation to this. Right? But because of the salah, اتفضل. The water is sufficient. You don't have to use soap. No, water is sufficient. You don't have to use soap as long as purifying oneself, and of course with wudu and ghusl. But because of the explanation of the hadith requires some more details, and we don't want to deprive people from praying 2 rak'ah before the iqamah. So we have hadith from yesterday that you guys didn't take, which is fine. We'll skip that day. And now we have 2 hadith. Just memorize the hadith, inshallah, and we'll explain the hadith. Al-ma' tahurun la yunajjisuhu shay' next time, inshallah. It's okay, inshallah. We'll have at least this week 5 hadith, hopefully. Actually, we're not going to make it to 5. Inshallah, we'll have them, inshallah. So, sallallahu alaihi wa sallam, Muhammad wa sahbihi wa sallam. Subhanaka Allahumma rabbana wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.